Has everyone joined the session? Okay, I guess. Let us start the session. Alright, so first of all, let us discuss what we will be doing today. So for today, what we have here is we will be doing uh, looping, that is if-else statements, while loop and for loop. What we will be learning about user-defined functions. We will be learning what is flow of execution and also what is the scope of a variable and name resolution, that is resolving the namespace. Alright, so let us start with the basic if-else that we had done in the previous session. So we already know how to use if. So suppose we want to compare something like if 111 equals to 111, then okay, sorry, my bad, it should have been a comparison operator, double equal to sign, then print something, else okay, sorry for the indentation. Then we should print something else. So something else. Now as we know 111 will be equal to 111, the comparison will return true and thus something should be printed. Let us check it out by executing this code. And as we see, something has been printed. Now suppose we want to execute the else part. So our conditions should hold false then. For that, let us copy this code and let us change this. Okay, it should do it. Okay, as we can see, as the comparison returned false, so the else part was executed and something else has been printed. So this is the basic if else and how it works. Next, what we have here is suppose we have 2 or 3 conditions and we want to check it in the same if else block. We don't want to use extra ifs because that would mean that we will be consuming more time for doing all the comparisons. Also sometimes we do not wish to go through all the comparisons and we wish to follow through a sequence, like if this condition is satisfied then do something else, if this condition is not satisfied and this condition is satisfied then do thing 2, means do the second thing, else if the third condition is satisfied then do the third thing, else if no condition is else if no condition is satisfied then do nothing or exit or something like that. So for those type of situations what we can do is use the elif statement. So how elif is used, let us see how elif can be used. Suppose first let us use a variable. Suppose this is storing some value, then we go if var1 then print 1, elif Alright, an important thing to note here is the indentation is not matching because of this extra lines that are being printed by the ideally prompt. For this reason, the indentation is not matching. Let us write this code in a file and then execute it from that file. That will make it easier for everyone to understand. Let us print 2, else we should print something. Let us save this. Now let us run this thing. Alright, as we can see, var1 was set to 2, so the comparison returned true, and hence print2 was executed, so 2 has been printed. Now let us proceed. I guess I don't need to say the how to use other relief. Let us take it out. This will be this will be providing the intuition as to how to use the elif statements. Suppose then 3. So how this thing is working is, first if statement is being checked, then the next elif statement is being checked. If true, then that is executed, else the next elif statement is checked. If that is not true, then the else part is executed. This is how the if block is executed in Python. So if we change this to 3, then we should get 3 as the result. So we get 3 as the result. So now we have done the if and if else block. Now let us move on to the usage of the while block in Python. So how do we use while block? While works in a similar way as the if statement. The difference is that while, as we can understand, what we mean by while is, while something is true, do something. If the condition is dissatisfied, then it should not be done. So while in Python works in a similar way. So let us do this. While var1 equal to it's less than 3 or less than 10, then print var1. So this should result in an infinite loop. Let us see how this infinite loop is executed. Another important thing to note here is Python also supports the use of else with while. So how this else works with while is, first the while statement is being checked, then after the while condition is, means after the, as the while condition breaks, that is when the while loop is being exited, then the else part is executed. So using while with else, we can ensure that even if the while part is not executed, the else part will always be executed. for that while else block. First, let us run a simple while block, and then we will also check how to use the else with while. So as for this, an infinite loop will be created. Let us run this and check how it works. Okay, so Control C will terminate the program execution. So what we have to do here is increment bar1 by some value. Let us use 1. Let us save this and again run this. As we can see, for the first if else block 3 has been printed, and after that for the while block 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. As soon as bar1 reach 10, the while loop check 10 is 10 less than 10, and it return false, and hence the while block was not executed. So what we can do here is include an else statement and then again print bar1. Now we should also see it being printed. Save and run. Right. So here we get 10. So as I have explained, the reason is after the while block means after the while block terminates, then the else part of the while block is executed. Even if the while block does not execute due to some reason, let us set this to 10, then it should not execute. Even then, the else part that is being executed, as we can see, we have got means the program printed 10 here for the else part of this while block. Okay, now we have done if else, we have done the while loop. Next, let us move to the for loop statements. So what we do here is for the for loop we need to provide sequences to iterate through the means for loop needs sequence to iterate through those sequences. So suppose we use for, and as we know for the sequence data types we have string, list and tuple. So let us use some of one of them. First let us use string. Okay, so for element in some string arbitrary. We don't necessarily need to write element. We can name this variable anything, but whatever we name it, we need to use that variable name within this for block to refer to that variable. So let us save and run. As we can see, the string is being iterated and the characters are being printed one by one. So if x and then it ends at j and it has ended at j. So this is how the sequence is being iterated using the for loop. Let us also check for the list and the tuple. So same thing. Okay, So this should result in the elements of the list being printed one by one. So let us save and run. So as we see, the elements of the list have been printed. Now suppose we have a 2D array. Like, we have not discussed 2D arrays so far. So 2D array means that each of the elements will have elements within them. So how this works? Okay, let us uh, okay. Now first let us print what this will result in is being the lists being printed. So first let us run and check it out. Okay, so as we can see here, we print the list. So what we can do here is we can change this. As we know that every element of this list has a list within which there are two elements. So what we can do here is we can do like this, like element 1 and element 2, and print them. Python will automatically map the variable names to the elements. So save and run. As we see, element 1 comma element 2. If so, suppose we want the elements to be printed in the next line, like in new lines, so we can do something like this, and this will result in the element being printed in every element being printed in a new line. These are some of the ways that we can use to iterate. As for tuples, the thing is the same. For the iteration, the for loop structure and all, everything remains same, just this third bracket turns into a first bracket, nothing else. Now suppose, like in other programming languages, if you have learned like C and Java, what there happens is we also use for loops for iterating a range of values. Like suppose we want to go from integer value of 0 to 10, so that is also supported. The Python format for that is, for suppose let us name a variable I in range. What range does is it returns a sequence object, that is a range object, in which the object start from the given parameter start and ends at stop with a given step. So what this means is, suppose a range starts from 1 and it goes up till 20, and we say that the step is 1, then this will result in a range object having the objects as starting from 1 up till we said 20, so up till it will go up till 19. So yeah, so n minus 1. Let us check this out. Suppose we say 1 goes up till 20 and the step is plus 1, then let us print I. Save and run. So it goes from the start to up till the n minus 1, that is the stop minus 1th value. We need to keep this in mind whenever we are using for loops with range. So even if we want to iterate in negative numbers, so like for j in range we want to go from, suppose let us go from -10 to -1 with a step of +1. Now let us run this thing. Oh sorry, it was named j and I, or printed just I. Okay, so as we see, -10 to up to n minus 1, so that is -1, that is up to -2. This is a thing to be kept in mind whenever using for loop with the range function. Okay, so we have completed if else, we have completed while else. Also for also supports else statement, that is after the for statement has been executed, then the else part is being else block is being executed. So if we write something like this, else print something, then this is fine. Even if for loop doesn't get executed, then the else part will always get executed as it was for the while loop. And with this, the looping part is almost complete. After this, all right, we had user defined functions and the flow of execution. Okay, so let us first do the flow of execution. What flow of execution means is the way the statements are being executed. So like in if else, the flow of execution starts from var1 equals to 10. This line is being executed, then the if statement is being checked. If it is true, then the exec, that is the interpreter goes to the next line, else it goes to the next line, that is it skips this if block. So what we mean by flow of execution is that the means how the interpreter goes from one statement to another statement. That is, we sometimes some statements are skipped as they belong to some if block or like while block. So this is what we mean by the flow of execution. And now let us move on to the user defined function. So suppose this one, let me print something. Now for user defined function, we need to use a keyword that is def. Then we need to write the function name. The function name needs to start with small, means need to start with characters, and it cannot contain spaces. So the name should be always something like, you can also use capital letters. And a thing to note is the function names are case sensitive. So please be sure as when naming your functions and to use that name only when calling the functions in your program. So suppose it is like this, it takes two parameters a and b, and then it prints the result a plus b. Alright. Another thing to note here is any Python function, that is user defined Python function, always returns something. Any function will always return something, which means even in this function we are not returning anything as specified, Like we have defined a function and we are just printing and not returning anything using the return statement. But what Python will automatically do is return none. None is an object type, that is, none is an object, which means that nothing is there. It is of the, it has the type of, means the type of the object is none. So as we are not returning anything in this function, none will be returned as a result when this function is being called. So let us check this. Let us call the function. Pass the values as 5,6 and it will be stored in something. So like what equals to this, and let us print what is being returned to what. So print save and run. So as we can see here that 5 plus 6 is 11, that has been printed, and for print part 2 none has been printed, because as we have discussed that any Python function that returns, that does not have a return statement, returns none, and thus none has been printed. Now what we can do here is we can define what the function returns as this, means like this. So like return a plus b, then we should get the result as 11. Alright, as we see here 11 and 11, it has been printed. Alright, so another thing we can do with user defined functions is we can define the default parameters. So like if we define the default parameters, and even if the function is called without any parameter being passed, then the function will run without any error being raised. So this is very useful for some situations where we want to avoid error at any cost. And also another thing to remember for user defined function while defining the default parameters is at first the default parameters should be specified, and only then the uh, other parameters should be specified. That is, the default parameters should come first and then the other parameters. So like if you have C, and let us first like this, control S F5. Okay, sorry, an indentation error. Sorry, a mistake. Non-default argument follows default argument. The default argument should come at last. At first, the non-default argument should come. Save and run. So as we can see here, let us print the value of C, and we will be able to see that 6 is being printed for print C. Save and run. So 6 was printed. Now for define parameters, okay, let us pass something like this, and let us run again. So we get 11, and for C we get 6, which had been passed as a parameter to this function. And I guess all the parts we need to know for defining functions and using them have been covered mostly. So let us move on to the next topic, that is the scope of variables and name resolution. So an important thing to watch out for is, as we can see, this for block, this function definition blocks, this within these blocks we are using some variables, and not all of them are defined within those blocks. It's like they are global variables and we are using them. So like suppose we have a function and within that another function, and we want to use some variable that has been defined in main. Like suppose we have var1 equals to 10, then we have def xfhd12, and within that we have another function like def something, and we use var1 within there, so like print var1, and then before the return statement is executed, we call bbi. Okay, let us run this and watch what output is being printed. So as we can see here, var1 was set to 10, and hence we get to see that for calling bbi print var1, so 10 has been printed. Now let us define a default value of a local variable, that is var1, and let us set it to 5. Now let us see what happens. As we can see that the new value of var1 that was being defined in the function definition has been used. So what we can also do here is define a global var1, save and run. So what happened here is the global var1 value got printed. So what this means is within this function definition, a local uh, namespace was created within which var1 was set to point to the object 5. But in the global scope, we had an var1 object that pointed to the object variable that pointed to the object 10. So when we declared global var1, then that object, that is the variable var1 that pointed to 10 was used, and not the local one. So in this way we can call the global variables, and in this way we can resolve the calls. Like if two variables have same name and we want to use the global one and not the local one, in this way by specifying global object, that is we want to use the global object, we can use that object and not the local one that has been defined. And with this we have covered most of the scope of variables. So I guess this will be the class for today. And as for the assignment, with most of the things being covered, let today's assignment be print, sorry, write a program print good number if a number more than 1500 is given as input. So solve this problem and we can discuss the answers in this offline session that will be held in 6th February in, as by the GCECT Tech Club at college. Also, the Tech Fest of GCECT is coming up, so we would like participants to participate in the coding competitions over there. It will be a good learning experience for beginners, and for intermediate level practitioners it will definitely provide you with an experience that will help you along the way. So let us end our session here. Thank you.